Wholesaling Syndicate podcast. I'm your host, Kai Logue, and today I want to talk about one of the most important things you can do to start closing more deals, and that's knowing how you're going to handle objections before you even get into them. Now, a lot of people, especially if they're new to sales, they feel like there's this endless list of objections you're going to run into on seller calls. Like there's some magical encyclopedia with thousands of different ways you're going to hear no. But here's the truth. I've had thousands of calls, and I can tell you that there's really only a handful of objections you're going to get. And when you break them down, they all kind of fall into, 3 or 4 boxes at the most. So yeah, I'm going to go over the ones we get most often as wholesalers. I'm going to go over how I handle them, how I recommend you handle them, and give you some tips and tricks so you can start closing some more deals. So before we get into, handling the objections, just as a preface, I want to say it's so important to make sure you do a good job building rapport by asking good questions, by sounding knowledgeable, sounding professional, and really uncovering their motivation. Why do they want to sell? What's going on? I think the most important part of the sales process is the discovery. It's where we're asking questions, we're learning everything we can about the seller. Because if you don't do a good job there, it's almost impossible, or it's very, very hard, unless you have a laydown, to get that deal closed and to get it to the finish line. So one of the ones we get most often is, I need to think about it, right? If you've been in sales, you've done wholesaling for any amount of time, you've talked to anyone on the phone, I'm certain you've probably heard this one before. I need to think about it, right? So it's real important to not just let them go there, because if you just let them go there, you're going to have to chase them around. You don't really know what they have to think about, and it's not really a real objection. It's just a stall, right? If they're not saying anything else besides, I just want to think about it, and I'll talk to you later. And so no matter whatever they say, you get an objection, the first thing you do is you agree. The first rule of sales, always, always, always agree. So, I want to think about it. Hey, of course, I definitely know it's a big decision. Of course, you want to think about it. But let me ask, I know you've been talking about doing this for about 6 months. I know you said you've been thinking about selling and you want to move and be closer to your family. But I definitely get you do want to think about it, but what is it exactly that you want to think about? Is it the offer? Is it, is it something else? What's holding you back at this point? Right. And then we want to see if they come with a real objection. But that's really it. So always dig deeper on that one. Say, hey, I get you want to think about it, but what is it that you want to think about it? I mean, does the idea of selling to a cash buyer like myself, who's going to close quickly for cash, cover all the closing fees, and is going to get this deal to the finish line, does that make sense? And if they say, yeah, great. And then you just go into looping, right? We'll talk about looping another one, but you don't just, ask for the deal again, start building certainty, like, hey, we've been in this business for a long time. We're going to get this to the finish line. We're going to deal with the title company. Here are the next steps. And then just keep going forward, right? And then make sure you sent over the contract, right? Because if they don't have the contract up, you're not going to get the deal. So make sure you have it. And then I just always go back into the contract, right? So, hey, I just want to make sure we got all your information correct. Does that look good? You see here, this is exactly what you told me you're looking for. I know it's a big decision, but trust me, I'm the guy. I'm going to get this handled for you, and we're going to get this to the finish line. Make sure all your info looks right. And if it does, just sign right on the bottom. Then you be silent, right? And so every time I finish it, I build a little bit more certainty in why they should do it with me. Hey, I'm going to get this to the finish line. I'm going to help you. I have a lot of experience doing this. Based on everything you told me, this is the exact thing you're looking for. And I just get back to the contract, right? Make sure it's correct. If it is, just sign on the bottom. And then you use silence, right? Silence is a closer's best friend. So just wait. If they don't say anything, just keep waiting. I've had calls where, minutes and minutes and minutes go by, 5-10 minutes, they don't say anything. And then, there's big, oh yeah, I signed it. Like, perfect. So make sure, you have that contract up, and then just keep going back to it, right? Just stay in the deal. You can't lose if you just stay in the deal. So another one we get is, oh, your offer's too low, right? Oh, I was hoping to get more money. Right. And why does that happen? It happens a lot. It's another one we get pretty often. It's because, one, they probably don't understand the value of your offer, or they're emotional about it. They're attached to the property. They have unrealistic expectations, and they just need to be educated. Right. So when you respond to this one, when you deal with them saying the offer's too low, say, hey, I definitely understand. If I was in your boots, if I was in your shoes, I'd want to get the most money I could for the property, right? Like, yeah, of course, of course you would, right? So let's go over, kind of what I'm seeing, and I'll break down exactly how we came up with our offer. Just so you know, I'm not trying to lowball you here. I want to share why my offer is fair and, why I think this is a good offer for you. Then I'll go, pull the comps up, show them a couple ones in their area. Like, hey, saw this property, went for this, for that. Your property needs X, Y, and Z, right? And again, we're going back to what they told us in the discovery, what it needs for repairs, what it needs for that. Obviously on a business, we have to make a little bit of money as well. But I mean, based on everything you told me, I've been in the business for a long time. I think this is going to be one of the best offers you get. Now, keep in mind, we're going to be covering all of your closing costs. There's no real estate commissions, anything like that. The price I offered you is the exact price that you're going to get, and we're going to guarantee that, as long as there's nothing drastically different when we do the walkthrough, we're going to get this closed for you. Does that sound fair enough? And just wait and see what they say, right? Sometimes they'll come back around, especially when you start to show them that data. But again, just stay in the deal. And then, sometimes they won't, right? Sometimes they'll be unrealistic. But if you just let these ones go, just you're going to have to chase them around, and you're going to get very frustrated, and you'll probably end up quitting and wondering, hey, why aren't these deals closing? You'll blame the leads. And you just have to, again, just ask better questions and then be willing to educate. So that's how I handle that one. And again, same as before, getting back to that contract. If you look here, Mr. Seller, this is the price we're giving you. We're covering all the closing costs. This is the date we're going to close, the title company we're going to use. It's going to be super simple. It's going to be easy. We're going to get this done for you. Okay. And then you just get them back onto it. So that's the biggest thing, right? What is the value that we give? Is that we close quickly, we're covering the closing cost, we're going to get this to the finish line. We're not like someone else who's going to give you this crazy high number and then at the last minute not actually be able to close. We're professionals, we're going to do this, and we're going to get this done for you. So those are two of them. Those are two of the big ones we get, right? They don't like the price, they want to think about it, or hey, I want to talk to my spouse, or I got to talk to my business partner, or I got to talk to somebody, right? I got to talk to whoever, right? This is one of the ones we get pretty often as well. And again, kind of going back to the first one, I treat it pretty similar. This one we have to dig deeper. So if they say, hey, I got to talk to my wife, like, hey, Mr. Seller, I definitely understand. Of course, I want to make sure you and your wife are on the same page. Based on everything you told me beforehand, it sounds like, you want to sell. You just want to make sure she's on board, right? I'm like, yeah. Okay, perfect. Well, I'm sure you guys have talked about this before. What do you think she'll say when you bring this offer to her, right? And you tell her that, hey, I have this cash buyer. I'm talking with Kai Logue. He's a cash buyer over with Syndicate Real Estate. And this is what they're going to close quickly. They're going to do X, Y, and Z, right? I kind of sneakily value stack again. And I had like, what do you think she'll say when you tell her that? And then whatever they say there, they're like, oh, well, I don't know if she'll like the price or, whatever. They're next to that. That's usually the real objection, right? Because unless the wife's there, which does happen sometimes, whatever he says is going to be his, right? And you just keep going back to reinforcing why it's a good idea for them to do this, right? You're not going to keep waiting. You're not going to have to deal with, real estate agents. I go back to whatever they told me they don't like, right? Or what they want to avoid and what they want to get. And that's kind of how I just keep stacking the offer. So they say, oh, they hate real estate agents, whatever. They don't want to deal with walkthroughs. They just need to close quickly. You 100% get, that your wife wants more money. And I want to make sure you guys get it, the most money you can. And this is why I got you the offer I did. And then you just go back, value stack, and say, hey, and if you pull up that contract, you'll see that right there. That's the price we're giving you. That's when we're going to close. Does that make sense? Like, yeah, perfect. Everything looked good. Sign there. And that's really it. I mean, right? It's a simple way. Like, once you get to a point, you'll be able to handle these all pretty much the same exact way. The biggest thing is just staying in the deal. So many people, they get an objection, they freak out, they didn't expect it, and they just, like, oh no, I didn't think it was going to happen. But when you think about it, most deals aren't going to go just right away. Most of the time, you're going to get objections. Most of the time, you're going to handle it. So the most important part is being prepared. So you can, take what I said and try to use that, or take whatever works for you, write it down and just practice it, drill it, and until you just have it and you're ready, when these objections come up. So So homework, best advice I can give for you guys is start writing down what objections you're getting most and what you're struggling with. What objections you get and you just don't know how to handle. And either, if they're these ones, try mine out, see how you like them. If they're not, if they're different ones, try to brainstorm what you've done in the past or what other people are doing, or, even go to ChatGPT, whatever, ask, how do I handle this objection? And that's really the best way you can do it, right? Some people like flashcards, people like whatever, but have them somewhere, even if you're just memorizing them, but have it somewhere where you know exactly what you're going to say before you say it, because it's so much easier, right? You're going to keep having these same conversations. They're not completely different, even though you're talking to different people. You're going to hear the same things again and again and again, especially the more calls, the more deals you do. You're going to be hearing a lot of the same stuff. So be prepared, practice, get those reps in, and keep closing more deals, guys. Stick with it. It gets easier. And that's really it. So again, don't act like don't get surprised when objections come. Just be prepared and just know you're on the right track, because you're right there. You're at the final part of the deal. Just don't quit. Keep pushing and get that deal closed.